We are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hacks Chat's interview. We have a very special guest with us. But before I get to the special guest, I need to introduce myself. So, hi, everybody. I'm RT Bear, over 30 years in this wacky comic book industry, working for mainly Marvel and DC, but I have done work for Dark Horse and Image, and you name the publishing company, I probably have worked for them as well. So, without further ado, here is the lovely, talented Taylor Grasso.
Hi, you guys. I'll be reading your chat today, so save your questions for Art and our special guest here.
Yes. So Taylor, did you have anything over the weekend? Anything cool? Anything exciting happen?
I feel better. I was sick. I
You
took a
know,
nap. I took a nap and it ended up being like 5 hours long.
did you take a nap yesterday?
Yeah, and then I couldn't wake up.
Oh, I did the same thing. Yesterday was my birthday. You know what my birthday present was? It was
Sleep.
sleeping. Oh my gosh, I feel so good today.
You sound a lot better.
I was almost dead the other day. Yeah, like if you listen to my voice, it's just like, hi, I'm Art T Bear.
You sound a lot better. You sound more alive now.
Good, good, good. Okay, well, here's our special guest. He's been working in the industry for a while now, and he's very talented. Mostly known as an inker, but he does other things as well in the comics industry. Mr. Peter Palmiotti. Hey, Peter.
Hi, gang. It's great to be here.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much put the spotlight on Peter and let Peter talk about himself, his future projects, the projects he's working on, and um, and his famous family lineage. He comes from a very comic book. Like, what are the other families, Peter? There's like the Cuberts, there's the Palmiottis. Gosh, just
Uh, oh, I don't know.
JR, JR.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the Ramitas, yeah.
the Ramirez. Yeah. I'm sure there's so many out there. Um, it's harder and harder to keep track of everyone, but yeah, the Cuberts come to mind easily. Um, because they're, father and bunch of brothers, and um, but we're the, originally we were both inkers, so
You guys got to get
and
like a school, like a Palmiotti School of the Arts or something.
Yeah, people in the chat are already asking, is Peter related to Jimmy?
yes, this is true. I have three older brothers, and Jimmy is the next one up. I'm the baby of the family. But me
Hmm.
and Jimmy were really close growing up and into comics, and we wound up both working in the comic industry. He's the high end. I'm the, the other guy.
I think he just kind of got on some better books earlier on. You're a talent too. I mean, you do great work as well. So
Thank you.
yes, okay. So I think we should just get into this. So tell us about your origins,
Okay.
how you got into comics, why you got into comics, and I'll try to steer with some questions as well. So I guess the first one is, were you always a big comic book fan?
I was. I would never like in my early days. I never considered myself a comic book collector per se. I was always number one into the art, so I picked up books based on the art. And yeah, I mean, it's like the my first experience with comics was actually when we used to go for our haircuts at the local barber, and they had copies of Archie and copies of Richie Rich. So that was my first introduction to comic books.
How old were you?
Oh, just really young, like I don't know, 5, 6, something like that.
Oh, that's perfect.
Um,
That's about how old I was too.
yeah. So from there, my father was, knew that both me and Jimmy were into comic books, and he took us to a couple of comic conventions. The first one I remember was like in some dive hotel, like in the basement, in dark basement of the hotel.
That's old
Um,
school.
So wait,
yeah.
wait. Okay, I have to back up. So
Okay.
about what year was this now?
Oh, chronologically, I am really bad at things, but okay. So I think George Perez was on the Avengers at the time.
So late
Um,
70s, maybe?
I don't know. Maybe it was before that. Um, I do know that George Perez was there, and I was young enough. Um, yeah, chronologically, I'm gonna mess up. So, um, but I was young, and Jimmy was young, and we went. My father dropped us off, and we walked around. It was like a giant basement room, and there was all retailers along the wall, just selling comics and maybe a couple of toys. Nothing too extravagant. It was just like I said, sort of a dive hotel, and nobody knew the convention was going on. I think.
That's
Um,
how a lot of them, I think, used to be, though, it seems like.
Yeah, the
yeah,
basement of hotels. Yeah.
for sure. And the lighting wasn't so great, but in the very center, there's a small little table, and that's where George was. We walked up to him, and he was drawing. So we were like, "Wow, this is cool. What are you drawing?" And he was drawing some Avengers. And um, most of my youth, I was ultimately like really, really shy. But Jimmy's, if anybody knows Jimmy, Jimmy's really outgoing, and he started talking to George and said, "Hey, what are you working on? What are you drawing?" All sorts of things, and we spent quite a while with George, and it was just really good experience. Pretty much that's all we took out of the convention, like just going up to George and watching him draw and interacting with him and checking out
So
what
at
he
the
had
time,
there.
well, at the time, were you going, oh, you know what, this is pretty cool. Like George is making a living doing comics. He's drawing. People are asking for autographs and stuff. I mean, was there any kind of like, that kind of thing going on?
I think. I mean, I had a lot of different likes and whatnot, but I think comic books had that. It's kind of like when you're really young, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be a cop, whatever,
Right.
like a
So it was kind
doctor.
of one of the things you thought you might end up doing.
Yeah, it's like these are neat. It'd be neat to work on these. I don't know what my shot is, but maybe one day. So I had that experience, and that was like in the edge of Brooklyn. We also went to what was then like a big Manhattan comic book convention in New York, and my father took us to that, drove us into town, and I guess left us there. But we walked around, and we got to meet a lot more people and creators, and just really introduced to a lot of different comic books we haven't seen elsewhere. Um, in our immediate neighborhood, I think.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oop, okay.
Yeah, you
Cut out
blanked
for a
out for a
second.
minute. Yeah.
Okay.
You said you're in your immediate.
Yeah, in my immediate neighborhood, I didn't have a comic book store growing up, but later on, I guess when I was in middle school and just before high school, a comic book store opened up. Um, and actually, I worked there a little bit, kind of, sort of, a couple hours here and there after school, whatever. Um,
Stocking shelves, taking orders.
yeah, yeah. So, like, I was a fan of Marvel books mostly growing up. Um,
Like action adventure stuff or
all the superhero stuff, Fantastic
oh,
Four,
Marvel books. Okay, I
Marvel,
misheard you.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
um, yeah, Fantastic Four, Avengers, Spider-Man, Cap, Thor, everything and anything. X-Men later on. Um,
Who were
You
some of your favorite artists at the time?
know. Well, definitely Stranko, Neil Adams. I'm trying to think. Ross Andrew. I mean, just a lot of
Do you
John
feel Ross?
Buscema.
Do you feel Ross Andrew is a little underrated in this industry?
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to convince people at this point. I don't know.
When he had a good eater on him, man, that guy is really good.
That's the thing. I mean, everything really relied on a good anchor. I don't think John Byrne would have been as big if he didn't have Terry Austin in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but I'm trying to think. I mean, I love mostly everybody. When it comes right down to it, I love the great artists and I love the bad artists, and it's kind of for different reasons. But yeah, so I grew up mostly Marvel comics. I really got into independent comics. Colleen Duran's A Distant Soil, Strangers in Paradise, Nexus was an early one.
I got Nexus in the day. That book was good. You remember that one of the books came with an album. It had like music and stuff in it. Like it was like one of those floppy, like a record
Yeah,
disc. Yeah, that thing was cool.
they were trying to push something unique and new. Yeah, I remember those bad floppy.
So you could listen to this like spacey rock music while you're reading the comic book.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was neat.
And of course, ElfQuest. ElfQuest was a big one.
I worked for those people.
Richard and Wendy Penny.
Yeah, when they had Apple Publishing.
Oh, that's when they did all the ElfQuest spin-offs?
No, I think they were still publishing their books later, though. And I think like Colleen's The Distant Soil, and then the Myth Adventures books they were putting out through Apple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they went through a bunch of different changes and publishers and but yeah, I mean, I picked up their very first ElfQuest issue and was immediately engulfed in what they were doing. There was a lot of others, but so I was aware of like the top of the market, which was Marvel Comics. I was aware that there were out there. There was EC Comics. There were Heavy Metal magazine.
All the British
so
stuff.
sort of
the Eagle books, or what?
Yeah.
What was it? 2020. What was that? The publishing line with Judge Dredd and all that.
Judge Dredd.
Oh gosh, I know what you're talking about. The
20
AD. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like since me and Jimmy were both picking up books, it was like whatever I picked up, he picked up something different, so we had a wider range of books.
I was just going to mention having a brother that collected comics. If I had that, holy moly, man, the collection would have been intense. Because the thing is, when you're a kid, you always have to decide, like, because you only have so much money. And you're like, do I get this? Do I get that? And you just want all of them. So this way, you guys could kind of have more of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I got into really picking up a bunch of books, they were what, 20 cents? 50 cents, somewhere around there. So
back when you could actually buy multiple.
Yeah,
I
could pick up $20. I could pick up a couple of bucks worth of comics, and it would be like 8 or 10 comics, and it would be like, wow, this is great. And
hey, I remember 10-cent comics. Not that I was like a breadwinner at the time, but you could get 10 comics for $1.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to comic stores in the bins, and they had even the cheaper ones.
All the back issues,
back issues and whatnot. So, yeah, it was a lot easier then to, if you're interested. and checking out something new to just pick up something really, really cheap.
And not have to mortgage the house to put a down payment on it.
Yeah, you could actually casually buy something.
And take a chance on new product, yeah.
So, it's like my whole family, they were all artists in their own right, but me and Jimmy, like, sort of pursued it as a career. I didn't initially after school, but I wound up getting into it later.
So did Jimmy break in first then, and then
Jimmy, Jimmy broke in first. I mean, it's like we both went to art school. So we both went to art and design for high school.
Art and design in New York City?
In New York City.
That's a major school.
Yeah. It's a big thing. He went before me. But when I went, I took up cartooning and animation. And then I did a couple of years of college with a Brooklyn college, and I took advertising art there. But because of, it was sort of like I really liked art, but I was getting into other things. I mean, back then I was getting into computers, but it was like all zeros and one and early code stuff. I wish I would have stuck with it. Otherwise, I could have been a billionaire by now. But so I didn't pursue art for a living right out of leaving college. I decided to just get a day job because I kind of thought I was too precious with art. I didn't want to earn a buck off of it.
Well, what was your degree? Was it in computer or was it in art? What did you graduate with?
In high school, it was cartooning and animation. I mean, they just...
No, in college, I meant.
In college, I didn't get any degree. I mean, it's like I went 2 years. My second year, I took as many art courses as possible. It was a 4-year college.
Mm-hmm.
So...
So your major was going to be art, not computers?
Right.
Okay.
But I was like sort of beginning to learn about computers in high school. I mean, it's just so diverse in what they throw at you. I mean, when I was learning photography, I was learning a little bit about cinema and movie creation, and it's like they throw everything at you.
Yeah.
But you're not really an expert in most things. And in my second year of college, like my mother's health throughout her life, from my point of view, was constantly up and down. She had a lot of major things going on and took a lot of pills and went in and out of the hospital. So it wound up like the second year, I was going through turmoil in my own life, but I think my mother's health waning added to it. So I was really more distracted than anything else.
You said you were terminal? What do you mean?
I mean, I was just going through kid stuff and life stuff.
Okay.
Nothing terminal.
I thought you said terminal. I was like,
no,
turmoil, right?
Oh, turmoil. Okay.
Yeah, turmoil.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's a whole new complication.
But so what wound up happening was I failed out the second semester of my second year in everything. It's like my focus was not on school. What I actually wanted to do was after high school was take a year off, possibly travel, and like really grasp what my major interest was. I wasn't sure. It was sort of like I was just you go from school to school, grade to grade to grade, and I wanted to take a breather to really figure out if art is what I wanted, or if I wanted to pursue something else. Um, but my parents were pretty old school, and they said, you know, you're done with high school, you go directly into college. We're paying for it. You know, shut up and go there.
Wow, I
So
wish I had parents like that. That would have been nice. Shut up, Art. You're going to art school. Oh, jeez.
Whether you like it or not, you're following your dream.
Twist my arm.
But yeah, I mean, I was so distracted my second year, and I think I overdosed on art courses. Plus, a big part of it was that um, I had a couple of really good teachers in high school. And when I was in college, I felt like I was repeating everything I learned in high school.
Yeah.
You know? And high school and like art schools back then were more structured, like, and you know, it's probably the case now, but I think they have a little more insight, where you're given a project, you finish the project, you move on to the next project, you finish that, and so on and so forth. It really wasn't about what you could do with this, in, you know, like having a lifetime career in art. It was just like, you know, learning to uh, illustrate, learning to paint, learning to whatever, you know, the particular art project was. So I felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it. I was distracted by other things in life, and
Well, at the time, just to back up,
sure.
what art career were you thinking you were going, or what field were you going to go in? Illustration? We're going to do fine arts? We're going to do comics? What were you thinking you were going to do?
I think I was thinking of pursuing comics, but they didn't really, you know, they had cartooning and animation, and I felt like that was closest.
Yeah.
You know, cartooning was like a wide range. It meant anything from, you know, being the page 6 political artist in newspapers at the time, or you know, like magazine illustration, or movie ads, or you know, a lot more was done with simple illustrations back then, and there was a lot more placements for it. I mean, everything now is webs and you know.
Right, but
Yeah.
also you're on East Coast, so you had access to New York City, and all the major publishing companies at the time were all in New York City. So you had access to, you know, the wide variety of like political cartooning, you know, newspapers, magazines, comics. You know, they were, it was all done there. It was really strange because at the time, you know, I'm a SoCal guy, California. And we dreamed of being in the position where you were, because we just didn't really have that here, because there just wasn't that kind of career opportunity, because all the publishing was done in New York City at the time.
Yeah.
So that must have been cool. I mean, at least you had that option, right? I mean, you always knew that you could go into New York City and bang down, you know, some doors and try to get in for work.
Well, you know, it's like, it's funny because I grew up, you know, I'm from Brooklyn, you know, technically, and you know, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I was there most of my life, and yeah, it's like right next door to Manhattan, but a lot of the times I just felt like, you know, a kid in a small town, so close yet so far. It's like, I knew Manhattan more than I ever knew Brooklyn. You know, it's like if I ever did anything, you know, once I got into high school, I spent more time in Manhattan than I ever did in Brooklyn. But I felt, you know, like, you know, I didn't really feel connected to any of what you just said, like that was going on. It's like, you know, I was a shy kid. You know, I didn't speak up for myself. You know, if anything, I shut down. as far as, having the confidence or think I had the ability. It's like, I probably shortchanged myself more often than not, as
Yeah,
far as that sort of thing.
if you don't believe in yourself, then it's
Yeah.
hard to get other people on the same page as you. So that
Yeah.
that is a tough thing. And artists, there's a real balance that's there, and it's constant, where you have to kind of tear yourself down so you can get better. So you can't, to be objective, you have to see things in a very critical way, and you have to be almost your own worst critic, but at the same time you have to be your biggest fan. So it really is kind of a weird dynamic that artists, and I'm sure other musicians and actors
Mhm.
have the same thing, where the only way you're going to get better is to be very critical and hard on yourself, but at the same time, you have to build yourself up. Otherwise, like you were saying, you'll never have the confidence to go out and do these things.
Mark
Yeah.
C in the chat says art school burnout is real.
Yeah.
Um, do
I
you
think
guys
my
think that's
daughter's
relatively common?
Yeah, I think my daughter is going to go through it now. I think she's finishing up her last year of Laguna Art and Design College,
Right.
and so I think, with the workload and everything, I have a feeling she's going to probably do what you were thinking, Peter. Just kind of take some time off after college and try to find herself, or at the very least, just kind of take a breath, and reevaluate. Um,
Yeah.
and oh, go ahead.
I think that's important. I felt like I needed it, and it's like, who knows what would have happened? Maybe I would have just, like, wound up in Hawaii on the beach for the rest of my life. But
That sounds nice.
Yeah, let's all go there now.
I had a old friend who used to do murals, who wound up like, moving to Hawaii and just painting murals and living on the beach, and
Wow.
like with gangs of other people, and it's like, that's quite a lifestyle. Um,
It's expensive to live there. It's not
Yeah,
cheap.
he must be doing okay.
oh, he did it for a bunch of years. I think eventually he moved on, but he said there's politics to that too, because the natives frowned on him. But
Yeah.
it's a whole different story.
Well, he was painting the murals on their palm trees. You don't like
Yeah.
Just in the forest.
that? What's
So,
all this artwork? It's all over the tree.
so eventually, kind of like, I went for a day job, and if anybody who knows me knows, like, I like to walk around. Like, I spent most of my time walking around Manhattan. So the obvious course for me to get a day job was initially just to become a messenger, and while I was in college, I started, working on the side, like working my free hours, whatever. Um, so I had a job when I was in college, and I was messaging. I worked from, like working within the companies. And, it's like when you work in Manhattan and you're working for some big companies, it's like multi-million-dollar companies. I remember, like, one of my first gigs was delivering bonds in Wall Street. I had to get fingerprinted, and
Wow.
it was like $1 million bonds I was walking with. I could have just, like, split at any point.
And you really could have gone to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Painted on the palm trees.
But
Ooh, Palmiotti palm trees. That
It's like fate.
could have been your thing.
could come up with our own drink and everything.
Yeah.
So I worked from being an indoor messenger to being an outdoor messenger to eventually working in the mailroom to eventually running a mailroom. I worked for like one of the top textile companies at the time, one of the top advertising companies at the time. I worked for it was Dancer Fitzgerald and Sample. And anybody who knows them, if you ever watched Man Man, they actually mentioned the company a couple of times.
So it's an
So
ad
they're a big ad thing.
Yeah.
They were like number 4 at the time I was working for them. They're the ones that did Where's the Beef and Take a Bite Out of Your Crime.
See, that's another thing about New York is you got all the ad agencies and stuff like, or you did at the time.
Yeah,
New York as well.
but they got bought out by Saatchi and Saatchi at one point, so I left them and moved on. I just went from one company to another. I worked places like 2 years, then moved on to a better pay raise, better, standing within the company.
So at this point, is Jimmy working in comics? Like, because you guys
at that point, Jimmy started assisting artists, assisting inkers.
was he working with Joe? Because I know, like Joe Rubenstein, you guys have a connection with Joe, right?
He did. I think I might have worked for him once or twice, but Jimmy did.
Because you guys had a studio in New York, didn't you? Like where, because I visited there, where Quesada, it was Joe Quesada, it was Jimmy, I think it was Joe, and I always thought that you were involved, like that you worked really closely with Jimmy.
Yeah,
those days.
I mean, like my first batch of years, and even probably longer than that. That I decided, when I decided to work in comics, I was assisting Jimmy. I was assisting other people. Essentially, the first time I had an experience helping my brother was when I decided, that I would make a commitment to work in comics. And so I was 28 years old, and for me it felt really late in life to make a decision of that monumental proportion. But I was working messenger life. I was pretty happy getting a weekly paycheck and just being comfortable and like leaving my job and not worrying about anything and just loving life and all that. And up until that point, I really wasn't committed to anything at all. It was sort of like loosey-goosey living life as you are in your 20s. And
I wasn't. But anyway, my story is a lot different than yours.
Okay.
Ooh, Art, you got to tell your story at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna tell your story.
Tales from Boomtown.
Yeah, Tales from Boomtown is something that, sorry to interrupt, something Art came up with, which might be a story time edition of a chat coming up.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing. Tell me if you think this is a good idea, Peter. I'm thinking they all call me Boomer, like on these threads and stuff. I guess that's
T-Boomer.
Yeah, that's a term, an affectionate term for an old person. So I was thinking, you're like always like. It's like, tell me a story, Grandpa. Like that's the old adage. So I was thinking, tales from Boomertown or something like that, and it'd be like stories with a old fart or something. Like in parentheses, to qualify it. So yeah, that's. What do you think? Would anybody be interested in me telling stories of being an old fart?
Mark C says, watch Art School Confidential, the depiction of university, and people says they're shouting Boomer, and Dr. Wright says, we're listening. I think they're on board.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it would be basically kind of what Peter's doing right now, but it would be me telling like old stories of breaking into the comics, meeting different people, talking about, meeting Chris Claremont or like even Jimmy Palmiotti for the first time, or Joe Quesada. Yeah, it could be fun.
I mean, I think that's useful and handy, and everything you did right they can copy, everything you did wrong they could avoid. I mean, it's always insightful, for people not experienced like you are.
Yeah, but the thing is, that whole thing where you said everything, like things that I did wrong,
that's the
I don't know if there are any. I'm just kidding. I did a lot of crappy, stupid things.
Boomertown, a tale of success.
The tale of success.
Yes.
Ride the road into Boomertown. The road to success. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what happened was that I was working my day job. I was running a mailroom for a reinsurance company, and it's like I was the only person in the mailroom, but I was running the whole show, and it was really weird because I was wearing a suit every day. I was a suit guy, but I was working in the mailroom.
Well, I'm trying to ease you over into the comic.
Yes. Okay. So here we go. So Jimmy called me up one day and he said, Mark Texiera, if you know Mark.
Oh, that's right. He was part of that group too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he was running behind on Ghost Rider, and he said, "You want to make a couple of extra bucks and help out Mark and me and get this book done." So my experience was pretty much that night going up to the Marvel offices after hours. So it was just after like 5. It was probably like 5:30 or whatever. And nobody was around except for us. It was me, Jimmy, Mark Texiera, Ken Branch, and one other person.
Wait a minute. You guys were like using the facilities there to finish the book?
We were
oh, that's cool.
in the bullpen. In the bullpen.
That's so cool, dude. Like like just me being a West Coaster, man, that's like a fantasy. You guys are just hanging out at Marvel offices, like, oh, we got a deadline, let's work on, and it's Texera on Ghost Rider. Oh,
I'd be there all the time.
I would
I'd never leave.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what decided my fate. I working in the bullpen, and I was strictly like filling in blacks on pages, but I was having a blast, and Mark was hopped up on coffee and sugar donuts, and we were just all flipping pages back and forth between us, doing different things on them. It was a whole issue of Ghost Rider, and we had it. He had to get it done. To hand it in tomorrow. And
how many pages did you guys have to get done that night?
It was at least half the book.
Oh,
wow.
So like 10, 11 pages, and you start at 5?
It was just madness. I mean, he was scribbling on pages, and Ken and Jimmy were trying to tighten them up, and I was filling in, half the pages were like just big black areas, and he had like half a face, and the other half was completely black, and it's like every shortcut you could possibly throw down.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, you probably did more work than they did, because there was probably more black on those pages than anything else.
But it was being up in the mall offices, in the Marvel bullpen. I mean, I freaking read, all their titles growing up, and read Stanley's bullpen bulletins, and here I was in their offices looking at all the editorial offices around there, and seeing, we were working the production part, so it was like everything was strewed across their tables, and we can look around and see everything. It was posters all over the wall. It was awesome, and how we we could only do that back then. We couldn't.
So what are we talking about? Like, is this the 90s now? Is this like?
Yeah, this is 91.
Okay. So was Don? Is it Don Daly? Was Don Daly your editor?
Nobody was my editor. I mean, I was working.
No, I mean on the Ghost Rider book. I
mean, maybe. He was for sure down the line. I'm guessing maybe.
I think he had Ghost Rider, the Ghost Rider books and the Punisher books at the time.
I mean, my first, 100 experiences of Marvel were just mind blowing. So, I forget more than actually I remember. But, I will never I will never forget my first experience there with them doing what we were doing. And, I made a decision 10 minutes in to being there that I would do comics for a living. And previously I had no commitment to anything in my life. And for me to make such a hardcore decision meant everything. So I said, one way or another, I'm going to figure out how to get into this industry. So it was years of
one way or another. You're in the Marvel offices. I had to fly from California to New York. I had to beg, borrow, and steal just to get in the door there. Like, you're already there, man.
New York kids.
That was
playing in the Marvel office.
I snuck in. It was me sneaking in. It was through the back door. It was through, my brother, and he worked his way. He got his foot in the door. He was doing backgrounds for various people. One was Tex. But I mean, he had a day job still.
Oh, so he wasn't inking him per se. He was doing backgrounds for Mark.
He was probably doing backgrounds. Yeah, he might have been throwing down some more inks than that.
Okay.
Just to meet the deadline. But I think he was still kind of making his way into it as well.
So assisting on the title.
Yeah. I wish there was better track records of everything we've ever worked on in the industry, but it's all mishmash. It's like I looked up mine and it's like, well, half of this is wrong, but
I have to ask though. Okay, so because I was friends with Joe Quesada pretty early on when he broke into the business, almost like day one. So I'm trying to figure out where I kind of was in the industry when all this was going on. So had Jimmy met Joe at this time, or was it still later on?
Well, definitely. I think by 93, while the Ray, I think that was
at DC.
In many ways, Joe's first big break. I think at that point they've met.
Okay. Because I think Joe worked on, was it some kind of sword and sorcery book?
Yeah, he worked on. He was I think he was initially a colorist at Valiant.
Really, I didn't know that.
And he got the Ray book. I could be wrong. I think that was his first big break.
I thought he did a Dungeon and Dragons kind of sword and sorcery book.
Yeah, but that was one issue, or I mean, it wasn't that much or that big, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I agree. So Ray was his big break then. Okay.
Yeah, as far as a penciler, later on he did Sword of Azrael.
With Kevin Nolan, that thing was beautiful.
That was gorgeous. I mean,
so did Jimmy ink the Ray then?
No. Okay. I forget now. It might have been Craig Russell. I could be wrong. I forget.
Oh my gosh, he always had good inkers then.
But where I came in was it was just before my time at Valiant. I sort of knew that they were hanging out and that bad things would happen. But
okay, well, I got to back up. You said bad.
Okay.
Thing. Well, what do you mean by bad?
Intriguing.
Thing? You can't just say that. You can't just say it. Leave it.
No, a lot of grew out of their friendship. I mean, they did event comics together. They did Ninjak at Acclaim. Valiant.
Event was their publishing company, right?
Yes, Event was their publishing company. They did 22 Brides. They did
Ash.
Kid Death, Ash. Ash was actually I came up with the name Ash, and they went with it.
Oh.
So
Well, congratulations.
that's my 2 cents to that creation. um, but yeah, I mean, a lot. Besides years of working together as penciler and inker, yeah, they created their own small publishing company. They went on to do Marvel Knights. They did Ninjak together, Exo Manowar together.
Solar.
Lots of things. Yeah, Solar.
Hey, I got to back up once again,
Yeah.
though. Okay, for an outsider, because I'm still living in California, and I'm kind of hanging out with I at this point I know Jimmy and I know Joe Casada. Um, were they friends before comics, or did they meet as they were working Valiant?
I think they met before Valiant, after Joe started the Ray. So I think while Joe was working on the Ray, they met. I could be wrong.
Because for some reason, they seem like almost like childhood friends. You know what I mean? Like their friendship was synonymous for years.
They do go back, and I mean, there was all sorts of like when when I mentioned them getting into trouble, they did Jimmy and Joe parties all the time, like later in their friendship. There was all these.
They were musicians too, right? So they would play.
Well, Joe was, Jimmy no, but they would have like parties at bars that all artists and comic book people would join. I mean, I remember Mike McNulty before he started Hellboy was there. It's like everybody and anybody at that time. But
I always thought that they would host these parties, because I heard about these parties as well. But I thought they would always play, like their band would play or something like that. I always thought that that Jimmy was part of the band, but he wasn't.
No. That was a Joe thing. He was 50% into music and 50% into comics, and trying to decide. He was offered some sort of album deal. It was very like, he can go either way at this point.
That's when Joe had the cool hair and he had the dangly.
Yeah. He went the blonde tips and the
insert picture here.
He had his like a dangly earring.
Yep. And a lot of what it made it easy is Joe had like an apartment like around the corner from the bar they originally had the parties at, called Openers. And they like
wait. Okay, so that's you guys used to work out of that apartment too, right?
I never worked there. I did house sit a lot of times at Joe's place. So that's, I spent most of my time there drooling over the sort of Azrael covers.
I remember hanging out there and working out of Joe's apartment one time. And I do believe like Joe was there, like Rubenstein and Jimmy was there as well.
I never worked in his apartment. I might have done it once, but maybe solo. But because Joe had, it was a typical New York apartment, and it wasn't that big.
It was tiny, yeah.
It was tiny, and Joe had he had his desk set up, and his bed was over it.
Yeah.
So it was like sort of a bunk bed, but it was like the bottom bunk was his studio.
I had something like that before, like a little loft.
It was very tight quarters.
It was narrow. I remember it kind of long. Well, it was longer than it was wide.
Right, and the ceilings were really high up. Probably 20 feet or whatever.
I don't know. For some reason, I just always thought that you guys were probably in there with lap boards, jamming, like getting things done.
What it is was Jimmy and Joe didn't have a studio space per se. I mean, Joe might have used his home studio to invite people over and work on comics and whatnot. But I was never really part of that. But what I was part of was that Jimmy had a day job still for many years where he did photo retouching, and I worked in that space after hours. The people that ran that allowed Jimmy to work on comics and use their art tables there.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so
And is this in Brooklyn still, or is this in New York proper?
That's in New York.
Okay.
I mean, Jimmy through that job, Jimmy got to work on a lot of Clint Eastwood posters. Like The Enforcer and around that time.
Okay.
He did a lot of photo retouching on that because the people that worked on the Clint Eastwood posters were like upstairs to them, and he got some gigs out of that.
This is before digital technology, so
yeah, everything was by hand and painting.
Like it's airbrushing and stuff. Yeah.
So I worked in that space, and it was me, Jimmy, Ken Branch, Barry Blair. Was one of the guys I would see a lot. He was like the spin-off from ElfQuest. He did his own Elf comics. And Dale Keown wet his feet making comics with him. So I got some inking out of him. Pretty much like I went to conventions and I just, talked to all independent people, whatever I can get. My first actual inking, one of my first actual inking gigs, the first full issue I inked was through a company called Personality Comics. And I inked a comic based on the Doctor for the original Star Trek cast, like his real life story. So not the character in the movie.
Oh, like an autobiographical?
Yeah. So that's why it was called Personality Comics. It was like all the actors and actresses' real stories. But my inks on that sucked.
You're not supposed to say that.
A lot of my early work wasn't so great, but
you in the chat should go hunt it down and decide for yourselves.
Yeah. I learned a lot on the job and got better over time. I mean, it's like I was lucky enough to work in the offices of Valiant for a while. I was doing background inking for them. I didn't stay with them too long, even though it was like the best experience, one of the best experience in my career. I didn't stay with them so long because I was so frustrated. I pretty much wanted to ink pages. I didn't want to do background inks. Even though
it's a good start, but yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. I've already been doing that for years for other people. And I appreciated the weekly paycheck and working up in the offices. Their office was set up where, like Marvel and DC are different. 90% of everybody is freelance. At Valiant, everybody worked in-house. We had the pencilers and inkers and writers and editors and production and colorists, everybody working right there.
Right,
and it was amazing. Yeah. It was an amazing experience. I'm trying to recreate that one day for my own thing.
Well, I'm showing him some of your new art now to try to get you some exposure. I don't know if you can see it on your screen now.
I can see it.
Yeah. Yep. So go ahead.
That's Retro. That's my character, Retro. The colors on that particular piece are going to be redone. Getting a new colorist, so we'll just redo the cover. But Retro is my superhero, my metahuman, as we're allowed to call them. Yeah. And I'm going to try to do a whole line for superhero comics, much like the Avengers, where you get a bunch of single superhero titles, and then the team book. So that will be most of what I do, but I'll also have, like DC is set up with Vertigo, I'll have my other kind of books in their own section kind of thing.
very
One shots and more indie kind of comics. And yeah, it's like right now, I'm not the brightest businessman, but I'm somehow pulling this all together. I got a dozen people who want to work with me. All the superhero stuff I'm going to be writing and inking as much as I possibly can. So I got a bunch of pencilers who want to work with me. And yeah, with crowdfunding, I'm going to Indiegogo retro to start. My schedule is kind of gotten kablooey. I wanted to do it the end of this year, but I might actually do it the beginning of next year. But I'm getting things together. I'm gathering the team. I'm planning my next year, what I want to do and focus on. Kind of just right now, I'm in the middle of inking Retro, the first issue, and Blood Rights, the first issue of that.
How far are you in on Retro?
Not too far. I mean, I do have a couple of pinups. Like this is the one of the pinups. This is the cover.
No, that's what we just saw.
Yeah, without the colors. But I'm only a couple of pages in on both. Although I really want to focus on both these titles and possibly get them both the first issues fully inked by next month. So most of the pencils for Retro are I have pretty much like Blood Rights as well. Most of the pencils are done, so it's just a matter of me sitting down and working on it.
Is this artwork that we're looking at now? Is this from Blood Rights?
This is Retro. This is Blood Rights.
With the two girls with the handgun, or the one with the handguns and the other one has a staff. Is that Blood?
Oh, yeah. That's Blood Rights. Blood Rights is a vampire demon kind of book. And
are they hunters? Are they hunting demons and vampires?
Yep. More to be revealed later, but essentially, if you like vampires or sort of demons and sort of the dark underbelly of the world, then you'll love that. The pencils on that are Rodney Jacobson on Blood Rights. The pencils on Retro are Rich Fuchsia. Rich is actually I did some inks on a book called Razor back in the 90s.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so he penciled one of the books I inked over there, and we got back in touch when we reconnected on Facebook years later. And at one point, I asked him, "Hey, I got this superhero Retro. You want to pencil the first issue?" And he's like, "Yes."
That's cool. So let's I got wind that there may be a new project in your site, and you said yeah, it was tentative, but but the way it was pitched to me, or was mentioned to me, that it was a done deal. But you may be working on Detective Dead, right?
I may be the inker on that. And more people seem to know about it than I do.
Critics seem to be pretty positive about you being on board. So
yeah, so I guess it's a done deal, and I'll be on the inker on that. I mean, I looked at the Indiegogo pages, and there's pages already inked on that. So I guess I'm inking what remains that needs inking. So exactly how many pages that will be remains to be seen. But yeah, I'm sure at some point we're going to call each other and really go over the details on it. But it's a gorgeous looking book, and you know, I'm broke as heck right now. Otherwise, I would have supported it. I did share, you know, much like everything, I share everything out. And it
So
was
with
one
that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
it was just go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, so with Detective Dead, would that be your first foray into this crowdfunding arena before these other books you have planned?
Um, well, I mean, that's already crowdfunded, so it's good to go as far as I know.
Which book are you talking about?
We're talking about Detective Dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you know,
thought.
that's
Well, wait, back up. I thought
okay.
that Taylor was asking you if you basically if you had crowdfunded before. I thought.
Yeah.
Um, I participated in, but I haven't directly crowdfunded myself.
Okay,
You
so
know,
then this
it's like
would be your first, then kind of. Well, not
yeah,
this. Maybe
first
even successful. Yeah.
yeah, first successful. Like you know, it's like I have a Patreon page, but I don't consider that like the same thing per se. Um, you know, definitely. Yeah, I haven't crowdfunded my own project. I've been part of other people's projects. Um, and mostly my experience with crowdfunding has been sloppy because other people have been handling it. But yeah, I'm very happy to jump onto Detective Dead and get to town on that and talk
I
with.
wonder if maybe I'm speculating here, but I think he was going to do a 30-something page, um, like feature in
That's
Detective.
right. The
So
bonus story,
the
right?
bonus story. So maybe you'll be working on the bonus story.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I think that was supposed to have Bigfoot Bill, which I would love to see
Yes.
how that matchup comes to light. That's going to be crazy.
Is that going to be the same artist as the book itself?
I don't
I don't know.
know.
I'm
Oh,
just speculating at this point, but I know that there was the main story for Detective Dead, and then he does have this team for that. So since you said that you mentioned that they do have that team, that maybe he's assembling a team for that 32-page story or whatever it was going to be, and I think it's going to be a team up between like Bigfoot Bill and Detective Dead.
And
hilarious.
for those of you watching right now, we had an interview with Credius where he talks all about that. So after you're done watching this, don't leave right now, but be sure to check that out on the channel.
Yeah, and Critias just funded. I think yesterday was his countdown.
Hmm.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if his store is open, but go by and check it out. Yeah, it's doing quite well.
Yeah, it's you know it's a really good looking book, and I like anything detectives personally. So I'm very excited to jump on that. And he did message me, and I messaged him back. It's just a matter of us really connecting and like I said, going over the details. But yeah, that's more like I heard I was on it secondhand. It's pretty hilarious, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, so I hope I'm not jinxing anything, but I'm just trying to connect dots.
Yes.
I think it's pretty interesting that we just had him on, and I didn't know that he was even talking to you, and then here it is that you may be inking his book. So I just
Yeah.
it's what is it, Kismet, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And he did
Yeah.
say, like you said, he was looking for an artist, so it seems likely.
yeah.
Detective
Okay.
T-Bear.
Detective T-Bear, yes, drawing lines. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Because we're going to go into um, some of my commission stuff and things, and little black and
Okay.
white plug.
I mean, there's a lot more to my story, but I want to essentially start up my own small publishing company with a bunch of my own creations. And once I get solid footing on that, I've already had people come to me saying, "Oh, I would love to publish my book through you." And it's like, well, I would love to publish my first issue. Let me get my my footing in. Um, it's crazy, but it's all positive and it's all great. I have lots of people who want to pick up my book when it is, gets up on Indiegogo and does get finished. So it's all exciting. And yeah, it's like I work from all. I work for DC. I have a couple of books through Image. Work for Valiant. Work for, I don't know, 1,000 indie publishers throughout the years. But to get the opportunity to work on my own books is a dream come true, and I got a lot of support behind me. So just yeah, trying to keep my head afloat.
Well, how many years at this point do you have in the comics industry?
Since 1991.
All right.
So a good 20 something, whatever it works out to be.
Yeah.
And it's like my brother says he started in 1991, which technically that's wrong. He started before me. So we both have a good chunk of years behind us.
So where does Jimmy live now? Because he's married to Amanda Connor, right?
Yeah, they're in Florida. I mean, all three of my brothers are living in Florida.
Okay.
I'm out in Kentucky. I'm the black sheep, I guess, at this point in time.
Wait a minute. How did you go from Brooklyn to Kentucky?
Well, I mean, my father passed away back in '88, way back when, and my mother was still around until 2006, is when she passed away, and both me and Jimmy were still living in New York at that point, in a large part because we're both overseeing my mother's care and wanted to be close to her and all that. But when she passed away, living in New York is crazy expensive, and
Yeah.
so we eventually decided, to go elsewhere. And it was by chance that, I mean, Jimmy and Amanda got in a relationship throughout the years, and it was by chance that Amanda was house hunting, and she discovered a house in Florida she liked, and they went to go check it out, and they bought it. So that they randomly wound up in Florida as opposed to anywhere else. And I wound up in Kentucky because I was looking for something cheaper than New York, which is probably 90% of everywhere. But the reason specifically why Kentucky is because I had a friend who had a wife and a couple of kids, and he grew up in Kentucky in a small town, Bardstown, and he invited me out there. He said, come out here. We'll work on some comics together. You could stay with us until you get your own place and that kind of thing. I was like, well, that sounds like a safe bet. Let me let me take the jump, the leap, and give it a shot. Because I definitely wanted it out of New York. I wanted a cheaper living style, and definitely Kentucky is like the cheapest I've seen. And I wanted to still be able to pursue working in comics without just 24/7 busting my ass. I wanted at least a little breathing room.
Well, now
New
with the
York,
internet the way it is, you don't have to live in New York City for the publishing access and things like that. So with the internet, you can live anywhere, really.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I decided. I mean, at the time I moved is when computers really came into being, and internet, and the capability of that is exactly that. You can live anywhere as long as you have internet access. You can send pages back and forth and be good. So yeah, I'm living in a small town out in Kentucky and loving it here. And eventually, as I make some serious movie, hopefully down the line, I want to get a bunch of acres and set up like sort of an artist community out here and have some animals and horses and whatnot and the whole shebang.
Well, those are animals. Those aren't artists.
Well, it's like I want to build a complex to where artists would want to come and visit and spend some time in the studio as well as outside the studio
and take care of your livestock.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool commune.
Feed the horses, Inca
That's
pig.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Slop the pigs, pencil a page. That sounds
exactly.
Cool. All right. That's really cool. I'm gonna see if I can go into this. Oh, I did.
There you
Ooh,
go.
look at that.
So, hey Taylor, go ahead and if you don't mind, Peter, and we'll wrap. We'll come back to you, but I want to get this little blurb in here. So, what are we doing here, Taylor?
All right. So, as you guys can probably see, this beautiful Wonder Woman was one of Art's commissions from a while back. And if you've been following the Indiegogo campaign for Black and White Remastered, and if you haven't, you totally should, we just added a new tier not that long ago, and it is the commission tier. And this is a big deal because also, if you're subscribed to the newsletter, Art just recently announced that his commission list for 2018 is now closed.
It's totally full. Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely full. So if you'd like to get a 11 by 17 full commission, like the ones that you're seeing here, the only way that you can get on the list to have one is by going to the Indiegogo campaign and getting one through there. There is one slot available, and it is a commission tier that is and included with it is the ultimate tier. So you can get your commission and you'll also get a copy of the book as well as all of the physical items, excluding the 90s goodies. And the ultimate tier proved very popular. So you can get all the stuff from that. I still think the ultimate tier might sell out, but you can get your commission. There's only one available right now. And this is kind of an example of what you could get. So it's one character, 11 by 17, pen and ink. You're probably seeing that some of these are in color. And Art, I think you said if they want color, it is available, but it'll cost a little more.
Yeah, just contact me once you pledge and everything's funded. Just contact me and I'll hook you up with a colorist, and we can get it colored for you. And then we'll print that we'll send you the high res file that you can print up yourself, but we'll send you a print as well.
But as of right now, that base tier price is for a pen and ink commission like you're seeing right here. There's a limited background, character of your choice. Of course, use common sense if you're commissioning because the content will be at the discretion of Art. But you can get your hands on those, and it is the only way to get one at this point in time. Art gets contacted a lot. Sorry to speak for you, Art, but he gets contacted a lot about people interested in commissions. And the 2018 list is closed. So unless you get it through the campaign, this is the only way you're going to get a commission.
Yeah, and that one tier has drawing in it as well. So there's a sketch that comes in the book for that, the ultimate tier.
That's right.
Yeah.
You get the signed copy of the book, and you get the black and white sketch on the inside.
And so then the minimal background or will kind of be like what you're looking at now with the Daredevil piece. So it won't be crazy like I think the next one I'm going to show you. This was a commission, but it was paid. There was a little bit more money to do the Sentinel head.
This is more like a cover tier, I would think.
Yeah, so there are variables as well, but this is kind of like the streamlined version here. And then here has the minimal backgrounds with the planet. and then
Pretty
Dagger
cool.
has little hints of Cloak in the background. Yeah. So and then she's got Batgirl's got the ground, and then she's got the moon, and then the bats. So and then Poison Ivy has the vine. So there are background elements. He's got the moon and the bats, and then Wonder Woman has the stars and the graphic design.
And by
there.
the way, if you guys are kind of buzzing about the color, if you guys like any of these that you're seeing here, the colored versions, you can actually buy these as prints on the Art by Thibert website. Most of them, I would say, are listed. I don't know, are some of them out of print? Maybe the Nightwing.
I think the Nightwing might be out of print, and like the Dagger, I don't think there's a print for that. And the Daredevil, there isn't a print. So some of these aren't prints, but they all started off as commissions, and then were later made into prints. So I just want to give you guys some context, and since we have this this venue that we can show off our wares and everything, I thought I would show you some of the commissions. So if you like this, then you have a better idea of what the commissions will look like. And once again, they're commissions of your choice. So whatever character you want, I'll doodle those up. But like Taylor said, I'm not going to really do your character.
Mainstream characters, please.
Yeah, mostly established characters and stuff like that. Because I don't want I don't want the commission to be used as a cover. Because if I'm going to do covers, I would probably charge a lot more money.
Yes, these are for personal collections only.
Yeah. So anyways, there's that. Let me see if I can get out of here so we can get back onto Peter stuff.
All right, looks like we're back.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
Yeah.
I get your black and white cable, the newest cable piece you did, and that's gorgeous.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the print that was made in just black and white. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I wanted black and white. It's like I want to see the lines.
Well, Taylor and I feel the same way. We love black and white art, but we live in a color world. Weird, right?
Yep.
In a world where prints are often in color, justice can only be black and white.
There you go.
So we got a new page here, right, Peter? What is this?
This is retro. I mean, I have a bunch of retro. And this is a more good example of what you'll be seeing in the comic. A lot of my influence about kind of like what I want to do is based off of comics I picked up. Anything from the '60s to about the '90s.
Funny you should say that, because Mark C in the comments says retro looks awesome in a '70s Power Man kind of way.
Exactly. I mean, the villain is called Diamond, and I forget if I have the first page here, but it's kind of taking like the very last scene of Rocky. Here's the first page. It takes like the first second of my comic retro is the last second of Rocky, where they face off and are fighting.
Well, it's got kind of a Master of Kung Fu vibe too.
Yeah. On that page for sure.
Yeah. So retro, he doesn't have a lot of special powers. He's stronger, he's faster, he's more agile, he heals faster. But his method of getting around Manhattan, which he's the protector of New York, is parkour. So it's very much inspired by like Daredevil kind of thing, but it's very specifically parkour method of him jumping around and getting around. To which you'll see in later pages the whole sequence to that. But yeah, it's like this was sort of a goof. Like I wanted to do like a GQ ad kind of thing. So I have him in costume, but then a jacket, like a suit jacket over it, and he's got his cigar and his liquor and hot girl on his shoulder, and
Looks like
I
he just
think,
got back from work. He's got his briefcase there.
yeah, it's like, I thought it would be a funny ad to throw somewhere at some point.
The Doers ad or some brandy ad or something. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even the name itself, retro, it's kind of a really silly, stupid name to use for a superhero character. But it's like I originally conceived of this character back when I guess my late teens, and came up with the name and sort of came up with the costume and the look of him, and sort of developed his story throughout the years since then.
Oh, you're the writer on this as well?
Yeah, I'm the creator, the writer, the anchor, and publisher eventually. And yeah, so the original drawing of retro was just like two figures where I drew the character, I wrote his name on the page, and I colored both the characters with like sort of a different color scheme. And I found out like a week later, my father put it in a frame and hung it up on his bedroom wall. And it was that like sealed the deal that I would do something with this character one day.
Oh, that's cool. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, we should start wrapping this up. Is there anything? Is there any place people can find you that you can show off your artwork?
Yeah.
And also, when were you thinking of putting out your book? When do you think it's going to come out?
You could find me. I would say YouTube is the best source. I talk about everything there, and I could direct you everywhere else. I'm all over the web under Peter Palmiotti, but you go to youtube.com/user/Peter Palmiotti, and I'm right there, or just type my name, Peter Palmiotti.
And that link is also in the description if you guys want to check out Peter's channel.
There you go. So subscribe to me there. As far as when, I'm hoping early next year. It's like a lot of chaos has happened recently, so schedules getting changed. But probably the latest will be February for Indiegogo, the first issue of Retro.
So then you are going to crowdfund it, and then are you going to try to get it into stores, or are you just going to do the crowdfund?
It will be online initially, eventually in stores. I'm going to slowly build the company from the inside out. So over time, I hope to eventually, be available everywhere, like people buy comics and whatnot.
Okay. So as far as social media, Facebook,
Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, I don't know, everything and anything. I'm all over the place. I'm the most connected person on the internet.
Well, very good. Hey, Taylor, did you have a parting shot?
Yes. So you guys follow Peter's channel in the link in the description. And please support Black and White Remastered, our current Indiegogo, which is the link underneath Peter's channel. And please consider liking this video to help boost our views. This channel is very important to us, and it does help get more eyes on independent projects like Peter's and like ours. So there's that. And if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter yet, please consider doing so. And if you're interested in a commission this year, be sure to pick up that commission tier on the Black and White Remastered Indiegogo.
Yes, thank you. And subscribe. And if you like this kind of content and you have friends, please share it with them as well. And Taylor, I just came across this, and I'm going to read this. I'm going to try to do it dramatically. Taylor and I just came up with a new tagline for Black and White. So here it is. Okay, you guys ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The line between justice and vengeance is blurred when an ex-spy and a brewery heiress join forces to take down an extremist with a growing army of mech bots. In a world where law and order is often blurred to gray, justice can only be black and white.
Black and white.
Yes.
Sounds action-packed.
I stumbled a little bit with the growing army of robots, but you get it.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. But yeah, thanks guys, and go check out some of Peter's stuff. It's quite good, and he's been doing this for a while. And just like with our book, the more support he can get, then the more he can stay in this independent arena, which is where our hearts are at. So thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll see you. We'll see you in a bit.
Bye.
Later.